Spencer Christian is an Emmy Award-winning reporter, best known for his 13 years on Good Morning America, where he covered the national weather reports in addition to traveling throughout the United States and abroad, reporting on a wide range of topics. Since 1999, Spencer Christian's been the weather forecaster on San Francisco's ABC 7 News team. A native of Charles City, Virginia, Spencer began his television career in 1971 in Richmond, Virginia, as a news reporter covering state and local politics, the public school system, and landmark cases in the Fourth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. A veteran of the U.S. Army Reserves with a Bachelor of Arts degree in English and a minor in journalism, Spencer Christian taught English at the Stony Brook School in Long Island, New York, for a year before launching his television career. While in Richmond, Spencer Christian won the Better Life Award for his reports exposing abuses in Virginia's nursing homes. In Baltimore, he won an Emmy Award for a special series called Does Anyone Here Speak English?, focusing on the declining language skills among America's youth. A longtime wine enthusiast, Spencer hosted Spencer Christian's Wine Cellar on HGTV and the Food Network from 1995 to 1999. He continues to be a serious wine enthusiast and visits California's wine country regularly. What got you involved in media in the first place? What drew you to this as your career?
I was in college in the late 1960s, a period of time I'm sure you've read about, heard about, when our country was going, through a lot of profound change. And young people were, in large numbers, were active in social causes and political campaigns. So I was in college at that time, 65 to 69, and I worked in political campaigns, and I demonstrated against the war in Vietnam, and I marched civil rights and women's rights and all that. And I was so fascinated by the way the news media covered what was all this change that was occurring in our society. I decided I wanted to be a journalist, not TV. I wanted to be a print journalist. I wanted to write for the New York Times or the Washington Post. So I majored in English and minored in journalism. And the first job I got in journalism was in television news in Richmond, Virginia. It was really weird too, because that's not what I was looking for. You want to hear the story, or should I?
Yeah, it's fate. Yeah.
So it was 1970, so I was newly out of college and had just got married, and it was interviewing with newspapers around the Virginia, Washington, D.C. area. And a friend of mine who worked with me in one of those political campaigns contacted me and said, hey, there's an opening for a news reporter at the NBC TV station in Richmond. Why don't you apply for it? And I said, TV? I have no experience in TV. And he said, no one does till they start. So, right? It's true.
That's a good line. You can't argue with that.
So he gave me the name of the news director, and I'm sure you're familiar with the TV character Lou Grant from the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This news director, Doug Hill, was just like Lou Grant. He had like a gruff exterior, but you could tell, if you were perceptive, he was a soft-hearted guy. And so I wrote to him, sent him some writing samples, talked to him about my interest in journalism. And he had me come in to meet him for an interview. Well, the interview turned out to be a 2-hour conversation. We just kind of clicked right away. And so then he gave me a long sheet of Associated Press news copy to rewrite. And he said, I'm going to take you to the studio and have you read this on camera. So I said, all right. I'd never been on a TV camera before in my life. I went to the studio, and for some reason, this was all happening so fast, I didn't have time to even think about getting nervous, right? I just went with it. And there was no teleprompter in those days. There was the days when you'd look down and look up and look down and look. And so I read the copy, and then he came into the studio and he said, you're a natural, you're hired. Wow. That's how I started.
You are natural. Yeah.
And you're going, wait, what? Okay, sure.
You still do Rodney Dangerfield.
Oh, I tell you, it's a rough life, I told my kid about the birds and the bees. He told me about my wife and the butcher. I'll tell you, Ed, it's a tough school, My school was so tough, the school paper had an obituary page. The teacher says, what comes at the end of a sentence? The kid says an appeal.
You still got
Well,
it, Spencer.
now we know what else you can do.
I can't help it. Eddie got me started.
Oh, Eddie. I
Had
know.
to
I'm
make
like,
this-
what's going on with Eddie and his neck? Now I totally get it.
That's what Rodney used to do. Yeah. I wish I had my tie on so I could do Rodney.
Well, so you end up now, you're like, okay, I was not going to do television, but then you must have really enjoyed it
Oh
because you
yeah,
kept with it.
yeah. I enjoyed it from the very first day. And uh, it wasn't because, oh, I'm on TV, look at me. It wasn't that at all. It was just that not only did it feel like my career dreams are coming true, but what was coming true was something beyond anything I had ever dreamed.
Mm.
I got to now remember I started as a news reporter. This is before I ever did weather. So Richmond, Virginia is about 25 miles from the little rural hick town where I grew up in Virginia. So at the beginning of my career, my parents could see their son on TV, and my old high school
Yeah.
classmates and people who had watched me grow up could see me at the start of my career. And it was just I just felt so blessed, because my parents, they had worked so hard. They were we all in my family, we all grew up poor and black in the old segregated South. So you can imagine the indignities and the injustices and the insults we faced every day just going out into the world that made you feel unwelcome and unwanted. But yet my parents are such special people, and we were people of faith, much like Eddie, and we prayed for a better day and prayed for guidance and direction and for a level of grace that will allow us to be kind to those who are unkind to us.
Wow.
Right. So anyhow,
Mhm.
this is the way I was raised. So now here I am in this new age. I was the third person of color ever to be seen on a local newscast in Richmond, Virginia. Richmond is the capital of the old Confederacy. The first black reporter in Richmond started in 1967. And now 4 years later, I come on the scene. So with that as background, so I feel like my dreams are coming true. My prayers are being answered. My parents are so proud that all the work and love and sweat and toil that they invested in raising their children is bearing fruit. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's such a great feeling. It's so many levels of joy. But anyhow, so I had been on the air for about 2 years doing news. And one day the news director, my Lou Grant,
Yeah.
came to me in a little bit of a panic. He said, our longtime weatherman has just quit unexpectedly. He said, and I need somebody to fill in on weather for about 2 weeks while we look for a replacement. And I had done a lot of science reporting, so he knew that I understood the atmospherics of weather, even though I wasn't, a meteorologist. And he also felt that I was comfortable enough on camera and had a goofy enough sense of humor that I could pull it off. So I said, yeah, I can do that. So I filled in for 2 weeks and still doing my regular reporting assignments. And at the end of 2 weeks, the general manager of the station called me into his office and he said, since you've been doing weather, our ratings have gone up and you've become quite a hit. He said, we'd like you to be our full-time weatherman. And I said, oh, no. I'm a journalist. I do news. And he said, I do news. He said, we could almost double your salary. I said, I'm a weatherman.
I'm truly a weatherman.
So the deal I made with the station was, I will do this because I am enjoying it. It was fun. But my passion was still news, and
Right.
I enjoy covering hard news and news features and all kinds of news. So I said, I'll do the weather at 6 and 11, but I want to keep my news assignments. And they said, sure, no problem. So within a very short time, of course, when you're doing weather, you're on the anchor set, on the desk with the anchors all the time. You get more exposure than reporters out on the field. So you become more recognizable. So I developed a high recognition factor very quickly. And then within, I don't know, 6 months, a year, I started getting offers from bigger markets. And that's what led me to move first to Baltimore because I wasn't sure if I wanted to go all the way up to #1 market. And then after a year in Baltimore, WABC is contacting me. And at this point, I'm saying, I think I want to have a career here. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I love, it's so funny. And we were interviewing Nydia Han, who is in 6ABC in Philadelphia. We were interviewing her yesterday, and I forgot to tell her this story. But I'm always laughing because in Philly, our our main weather guy in the mornings and on the weekends, or I guess he's mostly on the weekends, is his name is Chris Sowers. But I only know him as meteorologist Chris Sowers. Because he's like, hi, it's meteorologist Chris Sowers here today. Meteorologist Chris Sowers is bringing you the weather today. Meteorologist Chris Sowers is checking outside. I don't have to wear my coat. And I'm like, dude, you have more exposure than anyone in that entire station.
It's true. It's true. That's the thing. It's kind of funny, though, how they always introduce the meteorologist as if that's part of the name. Meteorologist. Yes. So yeah. And they don't say, here's Anchorman, George Stephanopoulos. But weather is so special in the local newscast, in network too now, because weather has become such a huge concern with climate change. But even historically, before people started thinking about climate change, weather on local news was always a big deal because it's the one topic that everyone is interested in, right? Some people don't care about the economic reports. Some don't care about the political reports. Some don't care about sports, but everyone cares about the weather.
Sure.
Yeah.
That it is so true. And that's one thing also nobody can argue about. You can't have a political disagreement about whether or not it's snowing outside when it's snowing.
Exactly. Except in recent years, we've had all these stubborn, rigid people in politics, even educated people who don't want to accept the science of global warming and climate change. They accept the science of, cancer research if somebody says you need to see your doctor, but they rigidly refuse to believe this until all of a sudden it looks like, life as we have known it is changing severely and dramatically.
I just have a random question for you, just because that popped one into my head. And that is, we always name, tropical storms and, hurricanes and all this, but now we're like naming snowstorms and things. When did that start being a thing?
The first time I remember that, Eddie, you might too, was when we had Winter Storm Sandy hit New Jersey. Remember that? Mm-hmm. That was the first time I had heard any meteorologist or any weather forecasters giving winter storms a name. But I think the reason it started is that storm was so, its structure and its behavior was so much like that of a tropical system. Right. It was different. The way it developed and the way it moved, it was uncharacteristic of a winter storm. It behaved more like a tropical system. So some meteorologists who were following it just decided, let's give it a name. And now that's become a thing, right? When we have a major winter storm that has a cyclonic structure and behavior of a tropical system, they give it a name.
Everybody who's watching is somebody who wants to have more airtime. Some of them might be people that might want to be reporters, but a lot of them are people like me. I get called, fortunately, to talk about things related to job and HR and those types of things. And all of us that do that, well, most of us crazy people, want to have more. So we're always asking the question, how can I be more newsworthy? Or how can I really, what kind of ways can I make sure that as I'm connecting with reporters and anchors and producers, really stand out and be somebody that's considered a go-to person? So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, there's some basic elements of newsworthiness that producers and bookers think about when they're doing assignments or booking segments. One is timeliness, right? If an event is occurring or someone is offering himself or herself as a guest to talk about a topic, if it's timely, if it relates to something that is current, that people are talking about now, that's part of getting more exposure. If you have something timely to offer, something that's topical that is people are chatting about, prominence. When you're booking guests, right? You're going to get an audience if you book, I don't know, Robert De Niro or whoever's popular at any given moment. Tom Hanks, Meryl Streep. You book a big name, and that person is going to gain viewers, even if they don't have anything special to talk about. People are going to tune in just because they want to see that person. But if you're not a big name person, if you have something timely to talk about, or something new, something was innovative.
Mhm.
If you have an innovation or a new idea, a new way of approaching solving a problem or tackling a problem, a new approach to cancer research or AIDS research,
Mhm.
that makes you a guest worth booking. Um, Sadly, conflict also and
Yeah.
tragedy are elements of
True.
timeliness, and that's why we see so much of what Eddie was talking about in that first half hour of Good Morning America or any major morning news show. Most of what makes the news in that first half hour is not stuff that's pleasant.
Right.
It's but right now it's the the war, Russia's war against
Absolutely.
Ukraine. Um, so those are some of the things that make for a good booking.
Well, I was just going to say, for this whole conference, you're our prominent person. You're the one. You're the big booking. You're the big star.
I
So thank you.
don't know about all that, but I'll take it. I'll take it. I remember when I first came into the business, just talking about a big star. Once I started getting more exposure, someone in the newsroom said, "You're on your way to becoming a star." I said, "Just a star? I want to be a whole constellation."
Oh, nice.
It's just there's so many people who want to be on camera or recognized for the wrong reasons.
Mhm.
Just for the sake of being recognized, or the sake of being famous. But if you have nothing to say and nothing to offer once you're on camera, no one's going to tune you in a second time.
Yeah.
I have a curious question I just thought of.
Yeah,
'Cause I've been in TV 40 years. You've been in TV 50, 51 years, right? So we've been around really the best of the best in behind the scenes and producers.
yeah,
And I remember back in the old days, the producers and directors and executives, they were big deals. And talent was talent.
yeah.
Now it seems like talent is the big deals. They're the multi-million people, and the producers, directors are not the big deals.
Yeah.
Could you
Yeah,
expand a little bit on that, or what your
Interesting.
you're
Yeah.
you're absolutely right on target there, Eddie. You're right because going back not too long in the past, maybe 2 or 3 decades, especially executive producers. You think of people like Roone Arledge, who came up with the idea for Wide World of Sports, and he was so innovative and such a forward thinker, such a what's the word? There's a word I'm looking for when you're like a seer and a forward thinker.
Visionary.
Vision, that's the word. Roone Arledge was such a ding, ding, ding for Michael. Roone Arledge was such a visionary. And there were other people like him who became known as executive producers. And then they worked their way up to, directors of networks. And they made the big bucks in those days. But somehow as the TV ratings became more and more important, and companies like Nielsen were being contracted by TV stations and networks to measure audience levels, there was more focus on the people on camera because not many people were saying, "I tune into this show because it's produced by Roone Arledge." More and more people
Mhm.
were saying, "I tune into this show because Walter Cronkite is on it, or David Hartman is on it, or Joan London's on it." So then the focus shifted more to the on-air talent, and then we started making the big bucks as well.
Mhm. That's a really good point, and I think that's an interesting, evolution of the business,
Yeah,
and it's all it's supply and demand because you're gonna to get more people, especially as there were more channels.
yeah,
I mean, I remember when there were only a few that you could turn to, and it was a big deal when you got the cable box, which
yeah.
was an actual box. And and now where there's so many options for people to turn to, you've got to make sure they're tuning in.
It's about booking guests people want to see also. So you can
Right.
have the most popular on-air talent on your show, but if you're not booking interesting guests and discussing interesting topics, and if you don't have a great stage manager putting everyone in their
That's a
proper
good one.
place
Good
and
one.
time cues so they don't talk into the commercial break the way our friend Charlie used to do.
Yeah. Is there anything as a reporter or an anchor that your management, producer, director, executive asked you to do, and you said no?
You
Or
know,
it was yes, yes, yes.
that's a great question, Eddie. I can think of only one example, and it goes way back to the early part of my career, back to Richmond, Virginia, when I was a reporter. And this was probably about 1972. There may be other examples. This is the only one that comes to mind. The assignment desk. I was in the newsroom one day. I hadn't gone out to, I wasn't on a story yet, and the assignment editor said, "We want you to cover the funeral of a slain police officer. Sad story, and we want you to get a soundbite from the widow." And I said, "Whoa, wait a minute. I don't know if I can. I feel very uncomfortable sticking a microphone in the face of a grieving person who's just lost her spouse, and the father of her children. And what am I supposed to say? How do you feel?
Yeah.
I said, I will not do that. So we got into a little bit of a a little argument over this. And the news director, my Lou Grant guy, came out and he took my side. Basically, he said, "We don't want to be known for that kind of reporting." So I didn't. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And I
That's the
think
only time I can remember being given an assignment I didn't want, that I sort of refused to do. I can remember a lot of assignments I wanted, and I really had to work hard to talk the producers into letting me do it. And in a lot of those cases, they said, "Okay."
But
And
I
I can
like
see how
that.
you wouldn't. Oh, I was just going to, real quick, I was just going to say, I can see how not only would you not want to do that and interview the widow, but I, as a viewer, don't want to see that. I don't want to see that microphone in her face.
Exactly. And I was thinking about that also. My first thought was, I'm invading her privacy and exploiting her personal grief. But the second part of it is, what are the viewers going to think of? They're going to think I'm a jerk for asking this
Yeah.
question. Now, there have been lots of assignments, especially during the GMA days, Eddie, where I was in harm's way, so to speak, but not because the GMA forced me to do it. As the weather reporter, whenever there's a hurricane or a blizzard or any kind of natural disaster, I was the one who was sent out. I was sent out on 14 hurricane assignments. I think on at least maybe 5 or 6 of them. I was there, on location when the storm came on shore and wind is whipping around and debris is flying through the air. But that wasn't something that I would have turned down. I mean, I recognize the potential danger, but I welcome the opportunity to be there and show people, the incredible force of the storm and the potential damage it can do, and how people in the affected area were preparing or maybe evacuating. So I welcome those assignments, but there were elements of danger sometimes too.
And tell us about welcoming the assignment that you got the nickname Sven.
Oh yeah. I love telling this story. So Michael, in 1988, Good Morning America went on we used to do these full show trips that we called vicarious vacations for our viewers. So we did a full show remote in Sweden for a week. It was the month of May, so there was a lot of daylight. Because they're way up north. So we arrived in Sweden, and every day of that week that we broadcast from there, our show was carried not only back here in the U.S. but on Swedish TV. So the Swedish viewers got to see how we were portraying their country. Now, every day that we were there, Charlie and Joan were broadcasting from a central location in Stockholm. The capital of the major city. But I was sent out on all kinds of remotes all over the country. I was in some of the remotest places you can imagine. So I was never there with them on that set in Stockholm. And I think it must have been the final day, right, Eddie, when they had Queen Sylvia on? Yep. Anyhow, one of the days they were broadcasting from Stockholm, Charlie and Joan had Queen Sylvia on with them. And I should go back, start at the beginning of the story. The very first day we went on the air, the very first day, I wanted to let the Swedish viewers know that I had some Scandinavian ancestry, and I do. I have some Danish ancestry. So I said, for this week that I'm here in Sweden, I don't want to be known by my English name, Spencer. I want to be known by a Swedish name, Sven. I want to be known as Sven. So a black man in Sweden stands out, right? Everywhere I went, everybody recognized me. Sven. I felt like a rock star. I should have changed my name to Elvis, but
Oh my God.
so everybody was saying, Sven, Sven. So on this day that Queen Sylvia was being interviewed by Charlie Gibson and Joan London, she asked, "Where is Sven?" Well, they explained to her that I was on a remote assignment. So a couple of years later, after now, our trip has ended, we're back in New York. Queen Sylvia comes to New York on some kind of a promotional tour. And she's got this cadre of Scandinavian reporters and photographers following her. And she came to GMA, and I was up in our dressing room. It was about an hour before we went on the air. And somebody came to get me and said, "Queen Sylvia is here. She wants to take a picture with Sven." And I said, "Oh, great, okay." So I ran downstairs, and she was there in that old entrance, you remember, Ed, and all these reporters and photographers around. And she said, "I would like to take a picture with you." Well, I'm a TV guy. I'm used to taking pictures of people. So I put my arm up around her shoulder, and all the photographers went, "Ah." And then I realized, oh, shoot, you're not supposed to touch royalty unless they invite you to. So I took my arm down, and she said, "Oh, no, it is okay for you, Sven." So I put
That is fantastic.
It is okay for you, Sven.
Wow.
So for all these years now, Eddie has been calling me Sven.
Nice. I like that.
But Ed, you were talking about something so important when you were talking about Phil Booth, an amazing guy. The importance of just recognizing everybody's humanity and everybody's dignity. My parents always instilled in my brother and me, I'm sure, the same kind of values you grew up with, Eddie, about treating everyone you meet the way you would want to be treated. That's the way Jesus lived his life, by just showing love and compassion and kindness to everyone you encounter, and not, giving a greater measure of respect to someone because of their position in life. So as my first job was winding down in Richmond, and I was about to make my first move up to the big time, the station gave me this going away party. So this was like 1975, and the entire station, basically, except for the switchboard, shut down for like a half hour so they could give me this little going away party in our studio. And as the party was breaking up and people were going back to their respective places in the building, the man who was the janitor in our building was this elderly. He was probably younger than I am now, but to me, he seemed elderly, black gentleman named Mr. Johnson. And as I was walking out of the studio, I said, "Hello, Mr. Johnson." And he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "Son, your parents raised you the right way because you give everybody in this building the same respect." He said, "You speak to me the same way you do to the president." And I went, wow. I mean, I got tears in my eyes because, well, first of all, he's right. This is how we should all behave. But he gave my parents the credit. If indeed I deserved that compliment, it wasn't something I earned on my own. It's because of the values my parents passed on to me.
Oh, you just got me all teary.
Yeah. Well, and that's the way that is. I mean, that you talked about that I watched your interview with Eddie, and that's a wonderful quality in him as well.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And it's, I don't know. I don't even know how to top. I'm not that I'm trying to top that, but it's just such a beautiful reminder again to us all that, you don't, like, there's no self-made millionaire. There's no overnight success. Everything takes hard work and dedication and attention to the details and the important things, like treating people kindly that are all around you. That was beautiful.
I have a friend, speaking of what you just said, I have a friend who always says, I worked 40 years really hard to become an overnight success.
Hey, Spencer, I'm like co-hosting this. I'm going to be an overnight success at 62.
I know. I was just talking to Eddie about this and what I wanted to do. And he's like, "Oh, hey, I can introduce you to some people." And I go, "Great. So we're going to interview them together." He goes, "Okay."
Okay.
By the time you do your next show, you have to go through Eddie's agent. That'll be me.
That'll be you.
I was gonna say, that'll be me too. Wait, no, you got it first. You called dibs first. Oh, Spencer, I am just so grateful for you being here with us. I am so honored. I'm kind of like not all falling over myself because I just really have always adored you from afar. Now I can adore you from across the screen.
That's so
But
sweet.
but but also thank you for just your stories and your telling us about what brought you along all those ways. And I just wonder though, when they were giving you that going away party, did they regret putting you on the weather station because you became so famous there
Yeah.
that they lost you?
You know, that's funny because if I stayed in Richmond, maybe that station would have still been a big deal. But no, like, GMA was such a wonderful experience for me because when Phil Booth is the one who hired me full time. I mean, I had an association with the show before I joined it full time, and I gave credit to people like George Morales and Squire Rushnell, who was one of the executives in the early days of GMA. But the guy who brought me on full time and was my boss when I was there was Phil Booth, and now I've almost forgotten the story I'm going to tell now. What was it?
Let's see. We were
Well, I
saying
I
that you
know what it was. So Phil told me, Phil recognized that I had many interests and many passions. And he said, Phil used to call everybody pal, right, Eddie? He said, pal, let me tell you something. You're going to be our weatherman, but you can report on anything else you want to report on. You can fill in as host when Charlie and Joan are away. You can go out and do feature reports or cover Super Bowls and World Series, anything else you want to do. But we also want you to be our weather guy. And that was just such a wonderful experience, the 12 and a half, almost 13 years I was there, because I really did get to pursue all of my interests and all my passions in this wonderful job that gave me this wonderful exposure while I was having fun and learning and growing and hopefully touching people's lives in a positive way.
Yeah. It's interesting you just mentioned that, because I was going to ask you a question, then you said it. You mentioned how Phil Booth let you host also.
Yeah.
I remember stage managing with you, co-hosting, and
Yeah.
you were absolutely fabulous. You just sat in there and did it. Do you have any experience that you could share with people watching, or any advice to be a host on a network show like that, and interviewing people, reading prompter, ad-libbing, or whatever?
Well, if I could give any advice, I guess the first bit of advice, Eddie, would be to have intellectual curiosity, to have a curiosity about what's going on in the world. I mean, well, maybe not all, but many people have their little areas of specialization, the medical reporter, the legal reporter, or whatever. But try to develop interest beyond just one narrow area. Because when you sit in that host chair, you could be doing interviews on 6 or 8 different topics in a 2-hour period. And you need to demonstrate that you have some measure of knowledge in each of those areas. So just be well-informed, read, be curious. So that's number one, be well-informed so you actually have something to say when you get on camera. It's hard to teach someone to be comfortable on camera, though, because many people, even many people who've been in the business for a lot of years, still have a certain level of discomfort when they go on the air because they think about how many people are watching, and they may be a little bit inhibited. I was very fortunate. I mean, as a kid, as a young child, I was very outgoing and enjoyed talking to people. So I've never felt nervous or uncomfortable on camera. But if I could give anybody a tip on how to achieve that extra level of comfort, it is let your guard down and don't be afraid to make yourself vulnerable. Don't be afraid to laugh at yourself if you screw up. I'll never forget. Maybe the best example I can think of, back in the early to mid 90s, 2 of the most popular novelists around were female authors. They both had 3 names: Barbara Bradford Taylor and Mary Higgins Clark. And one of them, I think it was Barbara Bradford Taylor, was the guest on the day when I was hosting. And at the end of the interview, I said, "Thank you, Mary Higgins Clark." And I called her by the wrong name. And then she said, "I'm the other one." And I went, "Oh, yeah." I fortunately, she helped me feel not so uncomfortable about my
Right.
mistake. And I was able to laugh at myself. And so many viewers, you know, in those days, everybody wasn't doing email. So many viewers wrote letters and said, "Oh my gosh, you cracked me up when you laughed at yourself." But if I had gone, you know,
Right.
and got
Right. Sure.
chest
Right.
up tight, it would have been an uncomfortable moment for the viewers too. So,
Yes.
in addition to being well informed and being curious and being well and you know, knowing something about a lot of things, try to find a level of comfort where you can let your guard down, make yourself vulnerable, and laugh at yourself if you screw up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Oh, so true. Yeah, and you're absolutely right because if you how you react, then the viewers are waiting for your reaction because
Yeah.
they're a little stunned too. And then if you laugh and go, "Well, that's not what I meant to say," then they'll go, "Oh, thank goodness." And there's
Even
a
after all
collective sigh of relief.
even after all these years in the business, it still happens to me. I just on the air just a couple of weeks ago, right here in San Francisco, I was something came out the wrong way. You know, I messed up a word or something, and I just stopped and looked in the camera and I said, "Well, my mouth and my mind are obviously not working in sync today." You know, that's what you have to do.
Oh, I so agree. Oh, I love it. Spencer, I could talk to you forever and I won't take advantage of you that much, but I am so grateful. I've had such a good time. My face hurts from smiling and laughing so much. Thank you so much for being a part of this with us.
Thank you so much, Michael, and thank you, Eddie, for making this introduction. Eddie made this happen, and gosh, I treasure you so much as a friend. It's a blessing to know you, to know both of you, and I appreciate that.